Ethan bought the house on a Tuesday morning, signed the last paper with a pen that shook only once, and walked out holding keys that felt heavier than metal. He did not tell his parents. He did not tell his sister. He told no one because this moment belonged to him alone. The house stood on a quiet street with old trees and clean sidewalks, the kind of place that felt calm the moment you arrived. For the first time in years, Ethan felt ahead of his own life instead of behind someone else's needs. He had earned it the slow way. Long hours, missed gatherings, a careful budget that left no room for error. While others leaned on family help, Ethan learned to lean on discipline. He rented small rooms, cooked simple meals, and saved in silence. The house was not large or flashy, but it was solid, and that mattered. He imagined quiet mornings, open windows, and nights where he could breathe without explaining himself. Ethan's parents lived only 20 minutes away, but their expectations felt much closer than that. They loved him. He believed that, but their love came with a shape already drawn. Ethan was the dependable one, the one without complications. His sister Mara had always needed more. She had married young, struggled often, and carried 3 children and a tired husband through years that never seemed to settle. Their parents worried about her constantly. Ethan noticed that worry always came with a solution that involved him. The house changed something in him. It gave him a sense of balance he had never felt. He walked through empty rooms, touching walls, counting steps, planning nothing for anyone else. He slept on the floor the first night, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the house creak and settle. It felt alive. It felt like a promise he had made to himself. A week later, he visited his parents for tea. He brought pastries. He sat on the couch he had known since childhood. The conversation moved easily, warm and familiar, until it drifted into the future without warning. His mother spoke as she always did, careful but confident, her voice full of plans she believed were already agreed upon. "When Mara and her family move into your house," she said, pouring tea, "everything will finally calm down for her." Ethan did not answer at first. He waited for the words to make sense. They did not. His father nodded in agreement, as if the matter had been settled long ago. His sister's name filled the room like a claim, not a request. Ethan asked slowly, "What do you mean?" His mother smiled, confused by the question. "The house you bought. It's perfect for them. The kids need space. You don't. Not right now." The sentence ended gently, but it struck hard. Ethan felt heat rush to his face, then fade, leaving a hollow calm behind. No one asked him if this was true. No one asked him anything at all. In their minds, the house had already changed. "Hans," his father added, "you can always stay with us if you need. Family helps family." Ethan understood then. The house was never his in their eyes. It was a resource, waiting to be used where they thought it mattered most. His silence during the years before had taught them that he would always adjust. He looked at their faces, searching for doubt, for hesitation, for any sign that this was only an idea. There was none. They spoke of moving dates, of schools, of how relieved Mara would be. His sister was not even in the room, yet her future had already been placed inside his walls. Ethan nodded once. He said nothing more. His hand stayed steady as he set down his cup. He stood, thanked them for the tea, and left before his voice could break the calm they seemed so sure of. The drive back felt unreal. The streets blurred. His thoughts moved fast but stayed sharp. He did not feel sad. He did not feel angry in the way people expect. He felt exposed. as if something private had been taken without his knowledge. That night, Ethan returned to the house alone. He walked through each room with the lights off, guided only by streetlight and memory. In his mind, the rooms filled with strangers, toys on the floor, voices that were not his, rules he did not make. He sat on the stairs and pressed his forehead against the wall. For years, he had told himself that being flexible was kindness, that staying quiet was strength. Now he saw the cost of that belief. Mara had always struggled, and Ethan had always stepped aside. When she needed money, he helped. When she needed time, he waited. When their parents worried, he reassured them. He had done it willingly, convinced that fairness would come later. Later had arrived, and it had passed him by. Ethan realized the betrayal was not only about the house. It was about being invisible until something was needed, about having his effort translated into obligation. His parents did not see his silence as patience. They saw it as permission. He stood up and turned on the lights. The house looked smaller than before, but it felt more real. This place had been built with his time, his restraint, his hope. No one had the right to give it away. As he locked the door that night, a hard thought settled in his chest. He would not beg to be understood. He would not argue for his own worth. If they believed the house was already promised, then they would learn what it meant to promise something that was never theirs. The idea scared him, but it also steadied him. For the first time, Ethan did not think about keeping peace. He thought about taking control. And in that quiet, empty house, the desire for revenge was born, not loud, not cruel, but clear and deliberate, waiting for its moment to act. Ethan did not confront anyone after that day. Silence became his shield. He returned to work, answered emails, met deadlines, and smiled when required. But his mind never left the house. Every thought moved in straight lines now, sharp and focused. The betrayal replayed in his head, not as noise but as facts. They had decided without him. They had assumed his life was flexible enough to bend again. At night, he sat alone in the living room and measured his anger. It was not wild. It was calm, almost careful. He learned that anger could wait. That made it dangerous. He opened his laptop and read through the documents again. His name was the only one on them. No shared ownership, no hidden claims. The law was clear, even if his family was not. That knowledge brought relief, followed by something darker. Power. Ethan imagined telling them no. He imagined their shock. He imagined Mara's voice, tight with disbelief. He did not enjoy those thoughts, but he did not push them away either. They settled in him like plans waiting for shape. His parents called a few days later. His mother spoke about schools near the house. His father asked about packing. They talked as if Ethan had already agreed. Each word felt like pressure, steady and patient, meant to wear him down. Ethan listened. He answered carefully. He said he was still sorting things out. The phrase was vague enough to keep them calm. When the call ended, he felt both relief and guilt. He had never misled them before. Now he was doing it on purpose. He drove past the house often but did not stop. He needed distance to think clearly. In his car, he asked himself questions he had avoided for years. Why was his life always the one that adjusted? Why was sacrifice expected from him but praised in others? Why did love feel like a debt he never finished paying? The answers were not simple, but they pointed in the same direction. He had allowed this pattern, not because he was weak, but because he feared conflict more than loss. That fear had shaped his choices, and now it was being used against him. One evening, Ethan met an old friend for dinner. The friend spoke openly about family struggles, about setting limits, about walking away when respect was missing. Ethan listened more than he spoke. On the drive home, he realized something important. His family did not see him clearly because he had never shown them his edges. That night, he made a list. It was short. Sell the house, rent it out, move in, and refuse access. Each option carried weight. Selling felt final. Renting felt like delay. Living there felt like a daily battle he did not want. Revenge took shape in his mind, not as harm, but as consequence. He would act within the rules. He would not shout or threaten. He would simply choose himself and let the truth fall where it may. Still, doubt followed him. He pictured Mara's children, their excitement, the way hope could collapse quickly. He reminded himself that their hope had been built without his consent. That did not erase the image, but it gave it context. His parents called again. This time, his mother's tone shifted. She asked why he sounded distant. She reminded him of how much the family needed him. Ethan felt the familiar pull, the old instinct to smooth things over. He nearly gave in. Instead, he asked a question he had never asked before. Why did you promise something that wasn't yours? The line went quiet. His mother responded slowly, choosing words with care. She spoke of fairness, of shared responsibility, of how Ethan always landed on his feet. She did not answer the question. When the call ended, Ethan felt something close to clarity. They were not trying to hurt him. They simply believed his needs were smaller because he carried them quietly. The next day he met with a real estate agent. The meeting was professional, quick, and efficient. The agent walked through the house, noting its strengths. Ethan signed initial forms without hesitation. Each signature felt like crossing a bridge that would not lead back. As he left the office, his hands shook. He sat in his car and breathed until the feeling passed. This was no longer imagination. It was movement. At home, alone in his apartment, Ethan stared at the ceiling and wondered who he would be after this. Would he feel strong or empty? Would he regret it when the anger faded? Revenge, he learned, was not loud satisfaction. It was a slow tightening of resolve. It asked for patience. It demanded clarity. It forced him to face parts of himself he had ignored. He was no longer reacting. He was choosing. When Mara finally called, her voice was warm, almost excited. She thanked him for everything. She spoke about plans, about space, about how grateful she felt. Ethan listened, his jaw tight. He said nothing that confirmed her belief. He said nothing that denied it either. After the call, he sat still for a long time. The weight of what he was about to do pressed down on him. He knew this would break something. He also knew that something had already been broken long before the house. As night fell, Ethan returned to the empty property one last time before the next step. He walked through each room. Slower now. This place had been his dream. Now it was becoming his message. Standing in the center of the living room, he understood the cost of revenge. It would not give him peace right away. It would give him distance. And distance was a form of truth. Ethan locked the door and walked away, carrying the knowledge that once the plan moved forward, there would be no soft ending. Only honesty, delivered the hard way. The day arrived faster than Ethan expected. The house, once silent, filled with voices that were not his. His parents insisted on a family visit, calling it a small gathering, a chance to walk through the space together. Ethan agreed before he could stop himself. Part of him wanted to see their faces when belief met reality. Another part wanted one last chance to turn back. Mara arrived first, her children running ahead of her, laughing as they pushed open doors and claimed rooms. With careless joy, her husband followed, already measuring walls with his eyes. already placing furniture that did not belong to him. Ethan stood near the window, hands in his pockets, heart beating fast but steady. His parents moved through the house like hosts, pointing out features, speaking with pride. They spoke of Ethan as if he were absent, as if the decision had already been completed somewhere beyond him. No one asked for his thoughts. No one noticed how quiet he had become. The sound of the doorbell cut through the noise. Ethan felt his breath tighten. He knew who it was. He had timed it this way. Not out of cruelty, but because delay would only weaken him. When he opened the door, the real estate agent stood there with a folder under her arm, calm and professional. Confusion spread through the room. The agent introduced herself and thanked Ethan for meeting on site. She spoke clearly, politely, unaware of the emotional ground beneath her words. She mentioned the listing, the interest, the offer already accepted. The silence that followed was sharp. Mara turned to Ethan first. Her smile faded slowly, replaced by disbelief. What is she talking about? His mother stepped forward, her voice tight. Ethan, what's going on? Ethan felt every eye on him. The moment he had imagined now stood fully formed, heavy, and real. He could still stop it. One sentence could end the tension. An apology could restore the old pattern. Instead, he spoke. I'm selling the house. The words were simple. They landed hard. His father's face darkened, pride wounded before. Understanding caught up. His mother shook her head, as if refusing the meaning. Mara stared at him as if he had spoken a foreign language. You can't, Mara said. We're moving in. Ethan met her eyes. He did not raise his voice. I never agreed to that. His mother spoke quickly, trying to regain control. She reminded him of family, of promises, of needs. She spoke as if love were a rule that could not be questioned. Ethan listened, then answered with care. You promised something that wasn't yours to give. The agent shifted uncomfortably but stayed silent. This was no longer her role to manage. Mara's shock turned to anger. She spoke of her children, of how hard things had been, of how cruel. Ethan felt the pull of guilt rise again, strong and familiar. He let it pass through him without changing his stance. I didn't do this to hurt you, he said. I did this because I was never asked. His father stepped closer, voice low and firm. You're breaking this family. The words cut, deeper than anything else. Ethan swallowed and answered honestly. I didn't break it. I just stopped holding it together by myself. The room felt smaller then. The children sensed the shift and grew quiet. The house, once imagined as a gift, now stood as evidence of a truth no one wanted to face. His mother's eyes filled, not with tears, but with realization. She saw, perhaps for the first time, the distance between intention and impact. Still, she did not apologize. Instead, she asked him to reconsider, to delay, to think about what he was doing. Ethan closed his eyes for a brief moment. This was the edge, the final step. He thought of the nights he had spent alone working, the moments he had stepped aside, the quiet ways he had been used and thanked for it. He thought of how easily his future had been reassigned. When he opened his eyes, his voice was steady. I have thought about it. The agent spoke then, gently explaining timelines and next steps. The words felt unreal, like background noise to a deeper shift happening in the room. Mara turned away, her face tight, arms crossed as if holding herself together. His parents said nothing more. Their silence carried disappointment, confusion, and something else Ethan did not expect. Respect edged with fear. They were seeing a version of him they had never prepared for. The gathering ended without closure. People left in small groups, avoiding eye contact. The house emptied again, but it did not return to silence. It held echoes now, heavy and unresolved. Ethan stayed behind after everyone was gone. He walked through the rooms slowly, his steps measured. The decision had been made. There was no turning back without losing himself. He stood in the doorway and looked once more at the space that had sparked everything. He did not feel joy. He did not feel victory. He felt a deep, aching calm, the kind that comes after a storm breaks. As he locked the door, Ethan understood that revenge was not a single act. It was a moment of truth forced into the open. And that truth, once spoken, could never be taken back. The sale closed quietly. No ceremony, no final speech. Just a signed page, a confirmed transfer, and the house passed into another life. Ethan did not attend the final walkthrough. He stayed at work, focused on small tasks, letting the day move forward without pause. When the confirmation email arrived, he read it once and deleted it. The first feeling was relief. It came sharp and clean, like stepping out of a tight space into open air. The decision was done. No more waiting. No more planning. The weight he had carried for weeks eased, and for a moment, he allowed himself to breathe. Then the silence came. His parents stopped calling. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly, as if distance were forming on its own. Messages became short. Conversations avoided anything personal. When they did speak, it was polite, careful, restrained. Ethan heard something new in their voices. Uncertainty. Mara did not speak to him at all. He heard through others that she was angry, hurt, embarrassed. He accepted that. He did not try to explain himself again. He had already said what mattered. Ethan moved into a small apartment closer to his job. It had thin walls, old floors, and no yard. He furnished it simply. A table, a chair, a bed. The space felt honest. No expectations followed him there. No one imagined plans inside his rooms. At night, he sat by the window and watched the city lights blink on one by one. He asked himself if this was what winning felt like. The answer changed each time. Some days, he felt strong. He walked taller. He spoke more clearly at work. He said no without apology. The old fear of conflict loosened its grip. People noticed the change and adjusted around it. Other days, guilt crept in. He imagined the disappointment on his mother's face, the confusion in his father's eyes, the way Mara's children had run through the house with hope. Those thoughts did not fade easily. They stayed, quiet but present. Ethan learned that revenge did not end pain. It moved it. Weeks passed. Time softened the sharpest edges but did not erase them. One evening, his father called. The conversation was brief, awkward. He asked how Ethan was doing. He did not mention the house. Neither did Ethan. When the call ended, Ethan realized something important. For the first time, his father had spoken to him without assumption. His mother called a few days later. Her voice was softer than before. She did not apologize, but she acknowledged that they had decided too much for him. The words were careful, incomplete, but real. Ethan listened without interruption. When she finished, he thanked her. All. Mara remained distant. Ethan accepted that their relationship might never return to what it was. He understood that consequences did not only belong to those who acted first. Choosing himself had come with a cost, and he paid it without complaint. One night, alone in his apartment, Ethan unpacked the last box. Inside were old photos, reminders of family gatherings, shared laughter, moments before expectations hardened into rules. He looked at them without anger, without longing, just understanding. He realized then that revenge had not been the point. Control had been. The house was only the symbol. The real battle had been for ownership of his own life. Ethan had expected to feel empty after it was over. Instead, he felt clear. He no longer waited for permission. He no longer shaped his future around what others might need from him. That freedom felt unfamiliar, even uncomfortable at times. But it was honest. One evening, while walking home, Ethan passed a row of houses. Lights glowed behind windows. Lives unfolded quietly inside. He did not feel envy. He felt patience. His life was not behind schedule. It was finally his. Revenge had promised satisfaction. It delivered something else. Distance. Truth. A line drawn where none had existed before. As weeks turned into months, the anger faded. What remained was resolve. Ethan understood now that revenge was not about hurting others. It was about refusing to be erased. He did not regret selling the house. He did not celebrate it either. It was simply the moment he stopped disappearing. For the comfort of others. Standing at his window that night, city quiet below, Ethan accepted the final truth. Revenge did not heal him, but choosing himself had started something better. And for the first time, that was enough.